Hello, brothers and sisters. Thanks for joining me. Hey, I think I'm going to do a story today featuring Rosie O'Donnell. I don't think I've ever talked about her before. And didn't she famously move to Ireland because Trump was a big meanie over in America? Even though she did that, she still likes to talk about America. I like Ellen DeGeneres better. She moved and then you never hear about her. I think that's great. But anyway, Rosie is entitled to her opinion. So let's hear Rosie's opinion. I came across this story in Sky News Australia. And just to preface this is the sad story of our week. This is the school shooting in Minneapolis, which is tragic and horrible. I feel so bad for those families, and I think people. I know a lot of Democrats said we shouldn't be praying, and got a lot of heat for that, or something to that effect. But we should pray for them. Just because there's evil out there trying to stop us from praying, we should still pray. That's what you do. That the devil wants you to stop praying, right? So anyway, I feel terrible for those kids. But Rosie from Ireland decided to wade into the mix on this one for some reason. Hey, we have free speech in America, so she's free to make her comments, and then you know what? I'm free to react to them. So let's do this. That's what this story is going to be about. Looks like this story is going to be about Rosie O'Donnell's groveling apology to MAGA after school shooting tragedy. So I think I know where Sky News is going with this story. So let's see what she has to say. And we'll watch the video. I'll stop it every once in a while and we'll comment and we'll see how it goes. I have not watched this video yet, so we'll see how it goes.
Is quite possibly MAGA's biggest critic, but today she was forced to issue a grovelling public apology after falsely claiming the suspect in the Minnesota school shooting tragedy was MAGA.
Hi everybody, it's Rosie O'Donnell, star of the Flintstones. Listen.
Okay, I gotta stop. Star of the Flintstones. That tells you how much people in America know about her. Flintstones, that movie was like 20 years ago. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I don't know if anyone even remembers that movie, let alone that Rosie was in it. But I had to stop it. Sorry. Let's go back. I'll try to be better. We'll listen to her whole apology now. I won't comment again.
Hi everybody, it's Rosie O'Donnell, star of the Flintstones. Listen, I have a cold sore. I know. Happens. Get run down. Anyway, I know a lot of you were very upset about the video I made before I went away for a few days. I didn't go online and haven't seen them till today. But you are right. I did not do my due diligence before I made that emotional statement. And I said things about the shooter that were incorrect. I assumed, like most shooters, they followed a standard MO and had standard, feelings of NRA-loving kind of gun people. Anyway, the truth is, I messed up, and when you mess up, you fess up. I'm sorry. This is my apology video, and I hope it's enough.
Okay, so there you have it. We've heard her apology. I'm actually very happy about that. Thank you, Rosie. You're for admitting you got it wrong this time. I actually appreciate the fact that she did that. We all get it wrong sometimes. I get it wrong all the time. People tell me in the comments all the time I'm wrong. You should see what they are saying about what I said about that little girl in Scotland with the knife and the gun. Woo, people really don't like what I said about that. But no, to be fair, she did apologize, and I think it was a fair apology from her. She did get a few shots in there about white supremacists and all shooters are white supremacists and all shooters are NRA. So it wasn't a complete apology, but I do think I think it was fair. Thank you, Rosie, for doing that. And what I hope comes out of this is that Rosie in the future checks her facts before she goes out there. She's got a massive platform. I haven't looked, but I'm sure millions of people see her stuff. And I hope we see it. I hope later in this story we will actually see what she actually said, because I haven't actually seen it because I don't really follow Rosie O'Donnell. I'm all for people coming out and giving their opinions, but don't tell lies. It really needs to be real facts, real things that things are based on. If you're going to tell your millions of viewers that it was a MAGA, white supremacist who wanted to kill little kids in a church, your followers are going to believe that. That's now a fact in their mind. And that's a problem. That's really the problem with social media. So I really think social media needs to be somewhat regulated, because so many people are getting their news from social media now. And we do need to figure out a way to knock down the disinformation. And my favorite way is on X, the community notes. I am not for the government censoring it, because what the government's been doing is basically censoring ideas they don't like. But let's get back to this. So again, thank you, Rosie, for the apology. I do appreciate it. That's I feel better about Rosie now after her doing this. I didn't think good thoughts about Rosie, but and I hope her and her like-minded people will just check your facts. Is all I'm saying. Okay, let's go on.
The apology came after a ramble O'Donnell posted on TikTok, which made incorrect assumptions about the alleged shooter.
What do you know? Was a white guy, Republican, MAGA person. What do you know? White supremacist. Nothing has happened since Columbine. Nothing. The Million Mom March. Nothing.
Commentator Jeff.
So, I'm going to watch that one again and comment, but everything she said about the shooter there was either a lie or she was misinformed. It appears to me she just went out there and went on a tirade in her way to her fans without knowing any of the facts.
Alleged shooter.
What do you know? Was a white guy.
It was a white guy. I agree with that. But she's left out the part that he was a trans woman.
Republican.
I don't know if that's true, but he's in Minneapolis, which is highly Democratic, and it's a Democratic state. So I don't know if that's true, but I doubt it.
MAGA person.
MAGA, as I said, he was trans. So a trans person in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I have a hard time believing they're a MAGA Republican. Okay, tell me I'm wrong, but my spidey sense is going off on that one.
What do you know?
What do you know?
White supremacist.
White supremacist. I don't know any trans white supremacists. If you do, please let me know. If anyone has seen any links that this guy is a white supremacist or any trans person is a white supremacist, please link that. I haven't seen any trans white supremacist stories, but maybe she knows more than me.
Nothing has happened since Columbine. Nothing. The Million Mom March. Nothing.
So there have been a few new gun laws that have been passed since Columbine, but very few. And generally the Supreme Court has been striking down recently most of the gun control measures that has come before them as being unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court is definitely loosening up regulations, and liberals don't like it. So yeah, nothing has been done from Columbine. I can see how that she would agree, she would think that. So I think nothing has been done from Columbine. That's probably fair. Very, very little has been done, and if anything, they've probably rolled some things back.
Commentator Jeff Mead blasted O'Donnell, calling her behaviour nasty.
Nasty behavior. Absolutely nasty behavior. This individual is lying through her front teeth. So she's going to tell her 2 million followers that the shooter in Minneapolis was MAGA, was a Trump supporter. None of this is true. He was a transgender individual who quite literally had "Killed Donald Trump" written on his weapons, like his gun and an optic. If you look here, what does it say? If you look here at the optic, what does it say?
I'm having a hard time thinking he's MAGA.
Right now. The evidence quite literally shows the exact opposite of what she said. And here's what's crazy. This happened on the 27th of August, which was 3 days ago. Look here at the bottom. She posted this 1 day ago. The evidence I showed you was out the day this happened. This individual is quite literally inventing a narrative to demonize MAGA and Donald Trump. And she's pushing that out to her millions of followers. It's not just an innocent mistake. It's blatant misinformation. It's disingenuous, it's deceptive, it's malicious, and it's manipulative.
I'm gonna have to follow this guy. Everything that guy said, I agree
Rosie
with.
O'Donnell who mischaracterized the alleged shooter. Sky News host James Morrow slammed other media outlets for their typical cover-up of the shooting.
Of the shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic church where students at a back-to-school mass at the Annunciation Catholic School, where at least 2 children have died and 17 more were injured. Now, frankly, it's really too horrible to contemplate here, but we have to talk about it because this story, this tragedy, has sadly become political. Now, this individual, Robin Westman, has been identified as the shooter, but because Robin identified as trans and posted a long, violent manifesto about his transgenderism and regrets and hatred of Donald Trump and Israel and the Jews and the Catholic Church and a billion other things, well, that's created a bit of a problem for the media. This American ABC report was typical.
We've also been going through it and can tell you there are crude diagrams of the church. There are also photos of the weapons, and they include all sorts of writings, the names of past mass shooters, criticism of Israel, the name of President Trump written on the guns. There are also racial slurs.
The name of President Trump. Racial slurs. You can see what they're doing here. They're trying to suggest maybe Westman was some sort of alt-right white supremacist MAGA fan. But what did the ABC leave out? Westman had written the words, "Kill Donald Trump," on his gun. I don't know. I kind of think that's important. For context, right? The New York Times, of course, was just as bad. They wrote, quote,
they're saying he's MAGA.
On social media, some conservative activists have seized on the shooter's gender identity to portray transgender people as violent or mentally ill. The right-wing uproar over Ms. Westman's gender identity echoed the politicized reaction to a 2023 mass shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville, which was carried out by a former student whom the police said was transgender. In a news conference, Mayor Jacob Fry of Minneapolis, a Democrat, urged the public to avoid scapegoating transgender people, unquote. So, you see what they did there?
Yeah. So on that, I wouldn't say for sure transgenderism is the problem, but I do think it is a fact that there have been at least 3 or 4 confirmed transgender mass shootings in churches and schools recently. The Kentucky one, I think there've been a few. So I do think it needs to be looked at, and what I actually believe for sure is he had some form of mental illness. It's obvious if you look at that manifesto, you see what he wrote. He hated everyone. He hated Trump. He hated Jews. He was having a mental break, and for some reason he did not get the mental health help he needed. And I believe Minneapolis is a transgender sanctuary city, or the state is, of Minnesota. I think maybe Tim Walz signed that. I think I have that in the back of my mind. So I'd like to look at did transgender sanctuary policies have anything to do with them not identifying him as mentally ill? Because he was transgender, did they decide really not to look at him as a mentally ill person? But he was obviously mentally ill. So we need to figure that out, because I do believe he bought the guns legally, is what I've read. And that's what I think the real problem with school shootings are. People like to stick their head in the sand and pretend like we don't have more guns than people in America, because we really do. We have more guns than people in America. And so since those guns exist and there's no political will to get rid of them, and people are shooting up schools, it seems to me that it's common sense to put armed security in schools, and put armed police would even be the best thing to do. But armed citizens would be better than doing nothing. And then I do believe anyone that would shoot up a school or a church is mentally ill. Well, maybe a church, you could be a religious radical. You might not be mentally ill. But a school, certainly, if you're going to kill children in a school, you're mentally ill. And so we need better mental health resources. Again, I'm not saying that trans is a mental illness. It might be. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. But I'm saying definitively this guy was mentally ill and did not get the treatment he needed. And so why not? And that's what we need to tighten up. I'm all for keeping guns out of the hands of the mentally ill. Now, I do see that it is a slippery slope, because what happens is you'll put in laws or regulations for that, and then very anti-gun municipalities or states will use those laws to basically say everyone is mentally ill and take away everyone's guns right. I get that, but we do need to find a way to keep the guns out of the hands of the mentally ill. All right, so let's go on.
So, you see what they did there? They did the right thing at the start by clearing up confusion about Westman's gender identity, but the paper was so afraid of the conclusions its readers might draw that it surrounded the report with layer after layer of messaging. So, like, if you paid the attention to the gender issue, they're saying, well, don't do that, because if you do that, you're right-wing and a conservative activist. And they also reminded you that Jacob Frey, a Democrat, so pay attention, urged against scapegoating. All this while insisting others politicized the shooting. Well, no, sorry, I'm not going to let that slide.
Minnesota was shocked by the horrific events of the shooting just last week, where 2 children were killed and several injured.
Joining us now is Hilary Fordwich, president and founder of Strellmark. Hilary, thank you for your time. Let's start with the horrific news out of Minneapolis, where at least 2 children have been killed after a gunman opened fire inside a school church. The victims are aged 8 and 10. More than a dozen others have been injured. Law enforcement agencies have identified 23-year-old transgender woman Robin Westman as the alleged gunman. Now, Robin Westman was formerly male Robert Westman. He allegedly had a handwritten manifesto with the message "Kill Donald Trump" written on magazines. The FBI is investigating this shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics.
It is.
This is just so heartbreaking and just so horrific. What more do we know about this shooter?
Domestic terrorism.
Yes, Gabriella, it's horrific, it's ghastly, and as a dear friend in Minneapolis actually said to me, Minnesota, said, there are horrible people in this world. And if you look at the manifesto that was actually publicized, he talked about, the fact that he wanted to kill children. And I can't even relate to, I don't know if any of our viewers can relate to anyone who would want to ever kill a child. He had multiple guns, multiple weapons. His manifesto laid out everything he was going to do, including choosing the right outfit. He had attended this particular Catholic school. His mother worked there. There are photographs of them as a family on Facebook, and neighbors have actually said, they seem like a completely normal family. It's very just daunting to think that this could be anybody's neighbor. He purchased the guns legally, and he actually posted on YouTube part of these manifestos. So it's actually a little surprising that nothing was ever brought down, or that somehow YouTube isn't monitoring that. I think that's a great pity too, Gabriella.
And Rosie O'Donnell wasn't the only one to be...
Yeah, so that is a good point. I do think that the platforms should be looking for violent content, things that are going to incite violence, and they should be either taking that kind of stuff down or taking down stuff that the police ask them to, or at least maybe send over that information to the police. But again, it's a slippery slope, because then the government uses that to take down all information that the government doesn't want you to see under the, hey, it's inciting violence kind of thing. So again, slippery slope, but he should have at least been identified and investigated. And I thought that story on Sky News was pretty fair, but this whole thing goes to show that the media can definitely spin stories, and you really can't completely trust the media anymore. They're interjecting their opinions to tell a story. It's not just the facts. So be careful about anything you see out there. All right, so let's go back and see what she's going to have to say again here.
It's a great pity too, Gabriella.
And Rosie O'Donnell wasn't the only one to be criticised for her reaction to the tragic events. The mayor of Minneapolis was also slammed for his tone-deaf response, dismissing the thoughts and prayers for the victims.
And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
I agree.
And in addition to these comments, Mayor Jacob Frey used the tragedy to stand with the trans community in another move that attracted heated criticism.
And I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids.
Commentator C.
Yeah, so on this, I would say I don't hate anybody, but we've now seen several trans shooters in America at schools or churches. We need to look at if there is a trans mental health crisis going on. That needs to be reviewed. Facts, it's not hate. We need to be making sure the trans community is getting the mental health help that they need. And I don't think that's racist or hateful at all. I think it's reality. And, another thing, it said he was a Democrat. Another thing I saw in another post where, people were trying to blame the Trump administration for this, which is laughable. I think it was Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, I think, had a post out on Twitter that said something like, this is the GOP's fault. Something to that effect. That seems ludicrous to me when the mayor of Minneapolis is a Democrat. The governor of Minnesota is a Democrat. Democrats actually control this. So yes, yes, Mayor, I agree with you. The kids should be safe. Why aren't you making them safe? This is Donald Trump's fault. Where is your responsibility to keep the kids safe? This is not a political issue. Stop politicizing it. Get in there and provide better security in schools. I saw a story just yesterday. I think I talked about it. A couple of years ago, after the Kentucky shooting, that was a trans man who went in there and shot the place up and killed a bunch of kids. Minnesota decided to add additional funds for schools. But Tim Walz, in all of his wisdom, didn't give any of the money to Catholic schools, and the Catholic bishops asked him for that money, or other religious or independent schools were not given any money. So Democrats, do you really care about school safety, or do you just care about school safety when it's not Catholics? Or that's crazy to me. All right, so let's rewind just a little bit, and then we'll go on.
Out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids.
Commentator CJ Pearson slammed the mayor, saying Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey just demanded that people stop villainizing the trans community after a trans person shot Catholic children who were attending Mass.
Yeah, see, and that's the other thing people hate. People hate the hypocrisy. People hate the double standard. We just saw at the beginning what Rosie did. She immediately villainized white men. So it's okay to villainize white men when we just make up in our minds that they did this shooting. But as soon as it turns out that the person is trans, we can't villainize the trans community. Stop the double standard. Like that, the hypocrisy is just crazy out there. And that hypocrisy is on the left. 100%. The left always talks about tolerance, and we're very tolerant. The left is not tolerant. The left is only tolerant if you hold their exact same opinion. If you have any opinion that differs, then you're ostracized, you're canceled, you're a bad person, you're unfollowed. They drive away their own. Look at all of the left folk who stepped out of line once because they couldn't meet their purity test and they got canceled. It's happened many times. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm sure I'm going to get lots of negative comments on this one. All right, so let's go. Let's see what else. We're almost done.
This guy is a disgrace to his office. Host Scott Jennings doubled down on slamming the mayor.
I really don't know what to say to Mayor Fry. People of faith turn to prayer in times of tragedy, and to decry their prayers, to belittle their faith, to angrily attack those whose faith fortifies them in their own lives, especially on days like today. I just don't know what to say to Mayor Fry. Perhaps, sir, you're trying too hard to please the political base. My advice, offered humbly, is to shut up for a few hours and try not to offend anyone else as they grieve and recover from this tragic moment.
I like Scott Jennings. He speaks sense to me. All right, so now we've watched it. This all started with Rosie saying some stupid stuff without checking the facts. Again, I'd like to end with, thank you, Rosie. I appreciate that you recognize that you made a mistake. We all make mistakes, and you apologize for it. Thank you for that. And then I hope that in the future, people like Rosie with strong opinions will just check their facts before they say things to their large platforms, because people will believe everything she said and will not see, the retraction or the apology. Lots of people will be thinking that what Rosie said is what really happened, which is unfortunate. And then, we saw the media. The media has spun this away from, oh my God, don't look over here that the person was transgender. Look over here, they were probably MAGA, because that's what fits the narrative. And that's what we see in most of the mainstream media. That's why it's good that we have things like X and Reddit and YouTube, where people can get other opinions out there that don't fit, the narrative of the mainstream media. Because it's better to work from the real facts. And then lastly, I would say this does show there's a mental health problem in America. We need to put a lot more money into mental health. We need to try to figure out a way to find these people earlier who are mentally ill and help them and get them that help that they needed, so that they don't have tragedies in their lives, and so some of them don't go down this path of shooting. And transgenderism is a part of it. I don't know if being trans is a mental illness, but I do think that the trans community is not getting the mental health help that they need. Trans people are like everyone else. Every community has criminals. Every community has crazy people. Just because someone's trans, we can't stick our head in the sand and say, oh, we can't get them any mental health help because they're trans. Oh, we're going to forgive their criminal behavior because they're trans. No, you need to hold them to account like everyone else, but we need to get them the help that they need. And stop politicizing stuff like this. This is not political. Let's get more security in schools so that we can protect kids. All right, that's what I'm thinking. Like, subscribe, let me know. I got a feeling I'm going to get some hate on this one.